it is political interference. This is about interfering with one of our fundamental institutions. This is about the integrity of the Prime Minister and interference. There's no way that anybody would interpret this other than interference.
I think it was clear that there's no interference.
Our latest interview with Pierre Poilievre made national headlines yesterday when someone posted a small clip of one of the questions he had answered and showed no context at all when he was giving his negative opinion on the RCMP. The clip went viral, and the mainstream media jumped at the chance to attack both Pierre and us here at Northern Perspective. Was Pierre too harsh with the RCMP? Or was he completely justified? Let's take a look.
This is a question on behalf of my colleagues in our Parliament Hill Bureau. Commissioner, in a recent interview, the Leader of the Opposition called the leadership of the RCMP despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government and accused your officers of covering up for former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the SNC-Lavalin affair. What's your response to Pierre Poilievre's comments, and have you ever faced political pressure from the government to not pursue charges?
So I think we've talked about SNC-Lavalin quite a lot under the previous government, and I think it was clear that there's no interference. I don't take any orders from any political individual. And as far as his comment with regards to senior management, I would invite M. Poilievre to meet with us and to meet with the people who run this great organization, 32,000 strong. So.
This is the Commissioner of the RCMP, Michael Duhaime, and he's responding to a question that came out of our recent interview with Pierre Poilievre. It was a very emotional interview, very charged interview, and although some people out there accused us of throwing softball questions at him, we actually thought we threw some challenging questions because these are questions that he's never asked. That's what we try and do here. Now, when it comes to this clip, this is the clip in question.
Many of the scandals of the Trudeau era should have been involved jail time. I mean, Trudeau broke the criminal code when he took a free vacation from someone with whom he had government business. It's just like it's right there in the criminal code. If the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged. And again, he probably violated the criminal code in the SNC-Lavalin scandal. These would normally have led to criminal charges, but of course the RCMP covered it all up, and the leadership of the RCMP is frankly just despicable when it comes to enforcing laws against the Liberal government.
Do you agree with Poilievre? Do you disagree with Poilievre? Before you make your decision, we want to show you the context in which his answer is actually based, because the mainstream media keeps saying, well, he has no evidence, he's offered no evidence. He doesn't need to, folks. It's already on public record. If you don't believe me, take a look.
The principal person of interest in the SNC scandal was at all material times the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. To you, Commissioner, the scandal is now over 5 years old. When did the RCMP interview Justin Trudeau?
He was not interviewed, sir.
Why did you not interview the primary person of interest? At the heart of this investigation was Justin Trudeau's political interference for his own personal gain and the gain of SNC-Lavalin. I can inform both of you gentlemen that in my over 30 years of experience as a defense counsel and as a Crown attorney, I have never heard of any investigation where there wasn't any attempt, whether they agreed to interview or not, any attempt to interview the person of interest. Was there at least an attempt to interview Justin Trudeau, yes or no?
No.
Did the RCMP obtain all relevant documents to further the investigation, including access to cabinet confidential information, simply seeking a yes or no response?
We were limited with the information that we had access to.
Was that a yes or a no, sir?
I don't know. We didn't know. We don't know. We still don't know this day all the information that's out there because some was protected.
I'll take that as a no. Despite collecting reams of evidence, including evidence from the Ethics Commissioner and testimony from Jody Wilson-Raybould at committee, Why didn't the RCMP exercise its absolute statutory right under the Criminal Code of Canada to obtain a production order and/or search warrant from a justice to obtain those cabinet documents?
We weren't able to acquire or obtain enough information or evidence that would warrant us to obtain a production order.
RCMP spokesperson Christy Veenstra is on record stating that to obtain a search warrant or production order, there must be reasonable grounds to believe that a criminal offense has been committed. The evidence at hand is insufficient to convince the trier of fact of the alleged offense. Clearly, she is conflating the legal threshold of policing with the Crown Prosecution Service. Both of you, sirs, will agree that your sole responsibility is to determine whether there are reasonable and probable grounds to lay a charge. It is not your mandate to prove the charge beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the independent prosecution service. Would you agree with that?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
We're going to stop there because this is really important. Recall what Duhaime just said at the press conference yesterday.
I think it was clear that there's no interference.
Here's the problem, because in making that statement, the police are pronouncing a verdict on this. And that's not their job. And that's what Larry Brock is saying. And Larry Brock has spent a lot of time in committee and a lot of time at public speaking events talking to people about SNC-Lavalin and saying, listen, the police, all they have to do is prove that there's a reasonable justification that a crime had been committed. That's their burden of proof. And if they have the mens rea in terms of the person knew that they were doing it, and the actus rea, they had the ability to do that, then that's all they need. And then they can lay a charge. Then when they hand that over to the Crown prosecutor, they have to go up to here and say, okay, so is there a probability that we can actually get this convicted? That's not what the police, that's not their job. That's the prosecutor's job to make that determination. And then if they say, sure, we think that there's a reasonable probability we can get a conviction, then it goes to court and then it goes up to here. And this is where the problem is because the RCMP is operating up here saying, you know what, they're either guilty or not guilty based on the evidence we have. Well, that's not your job. And that's what Larry Brock is saying here. And that's what he got Duhaime to agree. He said, I agree. And here we have him at a press conference a year or two after that committee meeting saying there was no interference. Well, you didn't interview Justin Trudeau. You didn't try to interview Justin Trudeau. You said in committee you didn't have access to all the evidence. So you cannot, beyond a reasonable doubt, make that determination at all because it actually hasn't gone through a court of law. The only thing you could have said is, we didn't find evidence. That's all you could have said. But here's the head of the RCMP pronouncing a verdict which is not in his job description.
This one's very straightforward. It's a decision tree on Section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code, fraud on government. It's by the RCMP, and they've populated information on the document. Was Mr. Trudeau a government official at the time? And it says yes. Did Mr. Trudeau accept a benefit from the Aga Khan? It says yes. Did the Aga Khan have dealings with the government? It says yes. Then it says, did Mr. Trudeau have consent in writing of the head of a branch of government for whom he worked? It says unknown. At that point, it says, if yes, then the final verdict would be not guilty. But it goes on, if no, did Mr. Trudeau know that he accepted was a benefit from a person who had dealings with the government? Yes. And then if yes, it says, final verdict, guilty of fraud on the government. Now, we know that, in fact, Mr. Trudeau did not have a writing from the head of branch of the government for whom he worked, because that question was put to him in the House of Commons.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is no statute of limitations on fraud charges, and the Prime Minister is not above the law.
Right.
The Criminal Code is clear. The only way the Prime Minister is not guilty of fraud is if the Prime Minister gave himself consent to break the law. That is in the Criminal Code. This is a clear and a straightforward question. I would like a yes or a no answer. Did the Prime Minister give himself permission to get away with committing a criminal fraud offence?
No, Mr. Speaker.
He was asked again on April 26, 2022. Again, the answer was no. So Conservatives put the question to the Prime Minister to answer the only open question on whether or not the RCMP should lay a charge of fraud on government against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the case of his illegal vacation to Bell's Cay. Now, illegal it was certainly law-breaking in that it broke the Conflict of Interest Act. The question is, did it break Section 121(1)(c) of the Criminal Code? Commissioner, did the RCMP call Mr. Trudeau and ask him the question?
Did we contact the Prime Minister in relation to this one? No.
Okay, so he wasn't asked, and it was left in the document as unknown. And the only open question on whether or not it met the standard of fraud on government. With due respect, Commissioner, the only outstanding question on the decision tree provided in the ATIP was whether or not the Prime Minister had consent. It was the RCMP said it was unknown. We satisfied an answer to that question and that he did not. And based on this document, it says final verdict, guilty of fraud on government.
So this is the Aga Khan issue, and this is the other issue that Pierre talked about. Based on the RCMP's own decision tree, he should have been charged. And later in committee, the commissioner and his staff sergeant say, if new evidence comes forward, then we can reopen that case. Well, new evidence was presented to you right in that committee. You should have known before that, but fine. It was presented to you right in that committee. What has been done since? Absolutely nothing. And again, another case where we didn't even talk to the Prime Minister. We didn't even talk to the guy who's at the center of this. In every other investigation, every other police investigation out there, who do they talk to first? They talk to the accused. You're wondering why people don't trust the RCMP? You're wondering why people think that there's a two-tier justice system in this country? Justin Trudeau's on a boat making out with Katy Perry. You don't think there's a two-tier justice system in this country based on that, based on what we're seeing here. And we're not done, folks. Like SNC-Lavalin, they've been in a lot of trouble in the past. This is not a case of, well, you know, it's some crystal clear angelic company who's done nothing wrong. Oh no. Back in 2019, former SNC-Lavalin CEO pleads guilty in super hospital fraud case. 2024, former SNC-Lavalin executive sentenced to prison term in bridge bribery case. Normand Morin, once a high-ranking vice president at the engineering firm, received the sentence April 23rd after his conviction for corruption and fraud last month. A police investigation revealed that SNC-Lavalin executives paid bribes of roughly $2.3 million in order to secure a $128 million contract to repair the Jacques Cartier bridge deck in the early 2000s. In 2017, Michael Fournier, former CEO of the Federal Bridge Corp, admitted to receiving the bribes through Swiss bank accounts between 1997 and 2004. Fournier, who served as chief of staff to Jean Chrétien when he was opposition leader in the early 1990s, was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison and has since received full parole. SNC-Lavalin was previously charged with bribery and fraud in relation to its past work in Libya, which became the focal point of the high-profile 2019 battle between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and then Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould. In December 2019, the company reached an agreement that saw its construction division plead guilty to a single count of fraud, accompanied by a $280 million fine, while other charges related to its acts committed in Libya between 2001 and 2011 were set aside. The company retained the right to bid on federal contracts. The same month, former SNC-Lavalin Vice President Sam Babal was found guilty of bribing foreign officials and pocketing millions of dollars. He was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison in January 2020 after a jury found him guilty of 5 fraud and corruption charges. He has until early 2025 to pay back $24.69 million that he earned from these crimes. So this isn't some squeaky clean company, and this isn't some squeaky clean prime minister with this squeaky clean company. In fact, SNC-Lavalin, their brand was so damaged by this, they had to change their name, and they're now called Atkins Realis, if you want to know who SNC-Lavalin is now. So this is what we're talking about here. Now, let's go back to Duhamson. There was no interference. There was no interference. So you don't even have access to cabinet confidence. You're making the judgment before it even gets to the prosecution or a jury. But there's also Jody Wilson-Raybould's take on this as well.
The deferred prosecution agreement thing and SNC and so on, I wanted to pass on where the PM's at. Our intelligence from various sources is that the company is getting to a very serious point now lot of like another rising anxiety, as you can imagine, about signature firm and job loss and all that coming after the Oshawa thing and what's going on in Calgary and whatnot. So the PM wants to be able to say that he has tried everything he can, within a legitimate toolbox to try to head that off. So he's quite determined, quite firm, that he wants to know why the DPA route, which Parliament provided for, isn't being used. And I think he's going to find a way to get it done one way or another. So he's in that kind of mood, and I wanted to be aware of that.
Okay.
So I don't know if he's going to call you directly. He might. And he's willing, I think he's thinking about getting somebody else to give him some advice. He doesn't want to do anything that's outside the box of what's legal or proper. But his understanding is, the DPA tool is there. And you have options that we've talked about before to ask for reasoning from the DPP, or even to take over the prosecution of that. Because I think he feels the government has to have done everything it can before we lose 9,000 jobs in a signature Canadian firm. I'm confident in where I'm at, and my views on SNC and the DPA haven't changed. This is a constitutional principle of prosecutorial independence that, Michael, I have to say, including this conversation, previous conversations that I've had with the Prime Minister and many other people around it, it's entirely inappropriate, and it is political interference. And the Prime Minister obviously can talk to whomever he wants, but what I am trying to do is to protect him. I can have a conversation with Beverly McLaughlin. I can call her right now. I'm just issuing the strongest warning I can possibly issue that decisions that are made by the independent prosecutor are their decisions. We gave her and them the tools, the additional tools. I made it very clear at the cabinet table and in other places that these tools are the discretion of the prosecutor, and everybody agreed to that, and there was no guarantee that there would be a DPA in this or any other case. So we were treading on dangerous ground here, so I'm going to issue my stern warning, because I can't act in a manner, and the prosecution can't act in a manner that is not objective, that isn't independent. I can't act in a partisan way, and it can't be politically motivated. All of this screams of that. So I'm actually uncomfortable having this conversation, but I'm happy to talk to you. I'll call Beverly McLaughlin. I can't even imagine her feeling in any way, shape, or form comfortable with interfering with the independent prosecutor. Okay, but I mean, I think that's where people are talking past each other. I mean, I think the view that he's formed, which I think I share, I'm not the lawyer in any of these conversations, and Elder and others, is it's not interference. The statute specifically has these other provisions in it that allow you to ask questions of the DPP, and that's provided for. It's not interference.
But I would have to issue a directive. I would have to gazette this. The prosecutor, the director, whom I know and understand after having several conversations with her about another directive on HIV that I issued, she is a by-the-book person. If this is gazetted, this will be, and this is not, and I hear you on the jobs and wanting to save jobs. I mean, we all want to do that. This goes far beyond saving jobs. This is about the integrity of the Prime Minister and interference. There's no way that anybody would interpret this other than interference. I'm surprised that you and I are having this conversation, but I'm just saying that I really feel uncomfortable and about the appropriateness of this conversation.
Okay, I understand that, but I think his view is he's not asking you to do anything appropriate or to interfere. He's asking you to use all of the tools that you lawfully have
I know I have a tool under the Prosecution Act that I can use. I do not believe it is appropriate to use it in this case.
Okay. All right. I mean, then that's clear. Well, I mean, he's in a very firm mood about this. So,
does he understand the gravity of what this potentially could mean? This is not just about saving jobs. This is about interfering with one of our fundamental institutions.
He obviously did not know he was being recorded. The word interference came up 2 or 3 times by Jody Wilson-Raybould in that. Michael Duham doesn't seem to think there's any interference. He's pronounced judgment on it, despite the fact that he's not received all of the evidence in the cabinet. Hasn't received it. Why didn't he receive it? Because the person in question that was under investigation, Justin Trudeau, had the authority to say, you don't get it.
Now, there is one person who had the authority to expand the parameters of that order in council, and that is the Prime Minister himself. The RCMP went and requested an expansion of the scope to obtain that evidence, to follow that evidence, correct?
Before we proceeded with the assessment, yes, we did make a request for an expansion to the parameters.
That request was turned down on August 30th, 2019.
I would have to say, Mr. Chair, that the request for the expansion was not allowed.
It was turned down, and it was turned down by the PCO, the Prime Minister's Department.
But Michael Duham says there's no interference. So this is where the context of Pierre Poilievre's statement comes from. Now, we're not putting this out to defend him. We're putting this out to give context on why he said what he said. Because we happen to agree. We happen to agree, and there's a lot of Canadians out there that agree. There's a lot of Canadians out there that don't trust the RCMP for specifically these reasons. Now, after this blew up, Toronto Star put out an article, CBC, Canadian Press, and when Canadian Press puts out an article on this, this goes everywhere. Everyone republishes it. And it talks about Northern Perspective, and it talks about Pierre Poilievre and the statement he made, and they went after him. And then that led to the press conference where Duham was asked about this by a CBC reporter. And then it was discussed on Power and Politics. Check this out.
It's an interview that Pierre Poilievre gave to a podcast that was recently released, in which he said some harsh things about the RCMP and suggested that former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should be in jail, and that the RCMP basically let him off the hook. You know, Bob, when that clip surfaced on social media last night, a friend of mine saw it and said, "Is this AI?" Because despicable leadership, cover up for the. I mean, what do you make of this from Pierre Poilievre?
One would wonder if he's trying to go full MAGA, because this, which I've never heard of this Northern Perspective or whatever it is. Yeah. It's they don't even tell us who the people are. If you go on their website, I've never heard of it. But anyway, he's now on this sort of crazy right-wing YouTube channels spouting what he's spouting. First of all, I think today that the RCMP commissioner did make a mistake today. He should not have shown up as a prop for the government announcement. He should stay away from the government on these things. He's supposed to be independent. Having said, on the substance of what Mr. Poilievre said, look, the RCMP had 2 criminal investigations, one on SNC-Lavalin, one was on the Prime Minister's, Mr. Trudeau's trip to the Aga Khan's luxurious resort. Yeah. They did do a criminal investigation. They decided in the end not to lay charges, which they would have had to gone to the public prosecution's office in any case to get that. There were 2 investigations by the conflict of interest commissioners, different ones. They never recommended that this be referred to the RCMP. Yeah. So even though they never recommended this, the RCMP did investigate and in the end did not lay charges.
Why now? What's the point of resuscitating that file now? Mr. Trudeau is gone. He's no longer in the public eye, except maybe for the daily male photographing him with Katy Perry.
Let's not talk about that, please.
Yeah, but he's no longer there.
He has a tendency to consistently try to undermine institutions, whether it's the Bank of Canada, whether it's the CBC, whether it's the Justice, and now it's the RCMP. And he does it with the media all the time. He says, you know, the mainstream media, we're fake media. When, you know, we try to be responsible journalists, and we have ombudsmen that overlook our stuff. I mean, it's not like we're freely going out there and making up stuff.
I was shocked when I heard this. And then to hear Robert Fife say that we're a crazy right-wing YouTube channel, and then go on to say, well, you know, we're responsible journalists. Responsible journalists. And he says, I don't even know who these people are. You know, they don't even say who they are on their website. Yeah, well, let's just take a quick look at our website, and you tell me if this is a crazy right-wing YouTube channel. Do crazy right-wing YouTube channels have the first thing that you see is a children's book on how to educate Canadians on Parliament? Yeah, that's really what a crazy far right-wing YouTube channel would do, right? It has our mission statement in there, in the about, and it says basically what we talk about. Do we need to update that? Sure, we need to update that. This has nothing with the hallmark of a crazy far right-wing YouTube channel. We're center-right. So I don't know what responsible journalism Robert Fife practiced when he went to look up who we were. He obviously didn't listen to any of our videos, didn't actually understand that we're a fact-based channel, that we add our opinions, that we value truth above everything else, and that we constantly cite our sources better than the mainstream media, might I add. Because in CBC's original article, they don't even link back to our original video. At least the Toronto Star did that. They just linked to our channel. And the fact that even Robert Fife says, well, you know, this has been dealt with. The RCMP didn't lay any charges. That's what we're talking about, Mr. Fife. And we've laid out a case as to why that's very questionable and why it seems like the RCMP didn't do their job. And it took them years to actually close the SNC-Lavalin case because nothing happened. It got buried. And now they're hoping that this whole thing goes away. And then for the commentators to go on to say, well, you know, why would Pierre Poilievre go after Justin Trudeau now? He's not in politics. I'm sorry. Are you only supposed to call for the arrest of a political opponent, which you would criticize him for anyway, when they're actually in politics? Maybe if you actually stop and think about it, because they're trying to completely impugn the character of Pierre Poilievre here and try to say he's some far-right nut job, when in actual fact, he's actually saying, listen, there should not be two tiers of justice in this country. I don't care that Justin Trudeau isn't the Prime Minister anymore in this country. He broke the law. And why isn't the RCMP doing their job? That's the main point. It shouldn't matter if you're Prime Minister or if you're a private citizen or if you're standing on a boat kissing Katy Perry. If you broke the law, you should be going to jail. And that's the whole point of this. Now, we're not done here, folks, because we've secured an interview with Duff Conacher from Democracy Watch, which has done, frankly, more research into the SNC-Lavalin scandal than anybody in Canada. So stay tuned for that video that's going to be coming up very shortly. And to finish on this, Charlie Kirk was assassinated because of the division caused by a lot of the politicians and especially the mainstream media. And when you listen to what Bob Fife says, and he says with no research whatsoever that Northern Perspective is just a crazy right-wing YouTube channel, that's what I'm talking about. That's what has led us to this very, very scary and concerning climate in media and politics. Do you get it yet?